My wife tells me all the time I've got big nuts. I put my nuts on the line tonight.
You are Locked On Fantasy Basketball, your daily podcast on fantasy basketball. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to the Locked On Fantasy Basketball podcast, brought to you by Fantrax and Basketball Monster. And today's show is also brought to you by Kent Saxton, who is our Patreon sponsor. If you want to be a Patreon sponsor, head across to patreon.com/redrock_bball. My name is Josh Lloyd, and as always, if you want to follow me on Twitter, you can do so at redrock_bball. We've got lots of stuff to talk about today. Obviously, all the games from Tuesday, including a potentially game-changing, league-changing, fantasy-changing, NBA-changing injury. And we will look ahead to Wednesday's action, where there are 11 games on in the NBA. So,
let's get to it.
All right. I'll talk about the Kevin Durant injury a little bit later on, but we will start off where we always start off, and that is with the monstrous line of the night. I hadn't spoken about Julius Randle for quite a while. Until, I think yesterday maybe, I started speaking about him. And then he went out and was completely ridiculous. 23 points, 18 rebounds, 6 assists, 3 steals, 2 blocks, 10 of 14 from the field and 3 of 3 from the line. I just really can't get my head around what Randle is. I still don't believe that he's going to be a good player because he is so inconsistent. But these sort of performances show you that he can do everything. He can score, he can rebound, he can pass, I was going to say he can do defensive stuff, but he can't. Although the 3 steals, 2 blocks here will make you think that maybe he can. That's just not something that he does on a regular basis. But this is a fantastic performance from Randle. I'm still not sold on him being a good player, but this is obviously a great sort of a line. He's the 100th ranked player on the season, but he's ranked 145th over the last month. It's been tough going for Randle. But the last 4 games, averaging 14 points, 13 rebounds, 4 assists, over a steal a game, and shooting 50% from the field. So he has improved in numerous areas over these last or since the All-Star break, really. Putting together some really nice numbers. I'm not 100% convinced that he can keep it up, because I'm just not a full believer in his talent, but he does have the ability to flash it. And he can put these numbers up, and we've seen him do it numerous times this season. It's just the consistency is not there for Randle. His last 4 games, 13 and 10, 13 and 11, 6 and 12, and 23 and 18. That's pretty impressive. And the 4 games prior to that, 14 points, 17 points, 15 points, 11 points. Nice. But then you have all these stretches of just middling type numbers. He clearly has to be owned in all sorts of formats at this point. Or maybe 8-team leagues. It's a little bit nebulous to consider him a must-own guy, but otherwise, I think that he should be owned in all formats. Really love what I saw from him here. Still not convinced. I'm still a long way off being convinced that Julius Randle is going to be an impactful NBA player, and I've been fairly critical of him, and I own up to all that stuff all the time. But this is a huge night from him, a huge performance for Julius Randle owners, or Julius Randle DFS players as well. Would have got him over the line, and let's hope for Lakers fans, let's hope for Julius Randle fans, that he can continue to build on this moving forward and put up these sort of numbers as we move forward into the rest of the season. The waiver wire line of the night goes to Ish Smith of the Detroit Pistons. Ish had 12 points, but that's not why he's the waiver wire line of the night, nor is his 1 rebound. It's the fact that he had 7 assists and 7 steals in his 29 minutes. He went only 39% from the field on 5 of 13 shooting, but he played again in preference to Reggie Jackson. Trying to work out what's going to happen with these minutes looks like it's going to be a tough challenge. His last run of games, his last 6 games, 31 minutes, 17 minutes, 20 minutes, 33 minutes, 14 minutes, 29 minutes. So, and obviously, you go look at Reggie Jackson's minutes, and they'll be the inverse of that. One day he plays nothing at all. The other day he plays big numbers. Really hard to get a grasp on it. He has had, in the last 3 games, though, 26 assists. So you need assists from someone, and they're very hard to find. Ish Smith is going to be your guy. He is averaging over the last 4 games 7.3 assists and 2 steals. But he's shooting 30% from the field, and he's averaging 7 points. So the value is very clearly concentrated in those steals and assists category. And in one game he had 16 assists, and in another game he had 7 steals. So they're big, big outlier numbers, which inflate those averages, which are that's the hard part with Smith. He could very easily, and he most likely will, go back and play 14, 15, 18 minutes in the next game and not stick with this 30-minute role. But the chances of him putting up a 30-minute performance with big numbers is still high. If you're just in desperate need for assists, then Ish is someone that you consider owning. But just be aware of his deficiencies in field goal percentage, in scoring, and usually in free throw percentage, although he has been surprisingly good in that area of recent times. He's someone that you have to consider without being totally sold on it being the best option for your team. But another big night, and the point guard scenario in Detroit continues to be really confusing at the moment, which is not what we want to hear, I guess. The young gun of the night, Nikola Jokic, of course it was. Another triple-double from Jokic, his third in February. 19, 16, and 10. 3 threes, a block. He was 6 of 10 from the field. He was 4 of 4 from the line. A lot of people were curious or panicky, maybe. Oh, Gallinari's back. It's really hurting Jokic. No, it wasn't. Jokic was just not fully plugged into those first couple of games after the All-Star break. I don't know what it was. But going up against the Bulls really enabled him to get things cracking again. He only took 10 shots, so it wasn't a matter that he wasn't taking the shots, because he still put up big numbers. Now, yes, the shot numbers are down because that stretch before the All-Star break, he was at 17, 23, 18, 13, 19. They were his last 5 games without Gallo, without Chandler, with lots of the Nuggets being sidelined. And he only took 10 shots here, but he doesn't need big amount of shots to be a contributor. You see, he took 10 shots and went 19, 16, and 10. He's going to be pretty much the same guy that we have seen over the last 2 to 3 months. We'll see that post All-Star for these last 2 months of the season. So another big night from Nikola Jokic. The dud of the night, it goes to Derek Favors of the Utah Jazz. Favors had 8 and 4 with 2 assists, no steals and no blocks. A 4 of 9 field goal percentage and missed both of his free throws. He had started to look a little bit more spry post All-Star break. The previous 2 games to this, he had averaged 14.5 points and 7 rebounds with 3 blocks as well, and shooting at well over 55%. But today's game, a little bit disappointing, and I think the biggest disappointment we have with all of this is that the minutes aren't getting to 30, and that we're seeing Quinn Snyder run smallish lineups. He's running Boris Diaw at times, and I really fear that we're not going to see 30 minutes of Derek Favors for the rest of this season. Is he ownable? In certain situations, yeah. He's the 105th ranked player over the last month in only 25 minutes a game. So that can have use in certain situations. But in a 10-team league, I reckon you're going to be able to do better than Favors. In a 12, it's debatable. It depends on your team. It depends on how you're sitting. It depends on what stats you need to take on your playoff opponents. But he's far from a lock, must-own guy, because I don't feel that the 30-minute threshold for him is coming anytime soon, and that's a shame for a guy that was a perennial top 50 guy and getting 34 a night and being one of the best players on this entire team, as Derek Favors was. Let's now move into these games and talk about them in a little bit of extra detail. Ron Jennings, who's watching live, just gave me a little message there. Yes, Ron, I am aware of that. I'm going to talk about that very much right now. So thank you, Ron, for mentioning that. But I'll talk about it now because it's the Golden State Warriors, and we've got to start with Kevin Durant's injury. Zaza Pachulia sort of rolled up onto his knee in the first 2 minutes of the game, and Durant hobbled straight to the locker room. He was not able to return to the game with an injury that the Warriors are calling a hyperextension. Now, we've seen a couple of hyperextensions recently. Jabari Parker's hyperextension was a torn ACL. Michael Beasley's hyperextension, which I thought for all money was going to be a torn ACL, apparently is not. He's just going to miss 3 games, although I'm not 100% sold on that. I think that he's going to miss more time than that, Beasley. I think that seems like a very weird diagnosis. But anyway, that's where we're at. And a hyperextension, as Jeff Stotts put out on Twitter during the day, a hyperextension is not an injury, it's a mechanism of injury. It's not like, he's suffering a hyperextension. Yes, that just means you overextended it, but what actual damage went down? Did you tear an ACL? Did you strain a PCL? Did you tear an MCL? Did you strain a patella? Like, what did you actually do? What was the injury? And that's what this MRI that Kevin Durant's probably having done at the moment is going to signify. Now, a bit of news that came out about 30 seconds before this podcast started is the Warriors, who are going to be signing Jose Calderon, They are waiving him and signing Matt Barnes. So that gives you the indication that they're obviously worried about Kevin Durant's injury. They need to get wing depth there. Now, I don't think that it means that we need to jump to conclusions and think that they know the answer, that it's a torn ACL or anything along those lines. I don't think we're at that stage yet, but it definitely gives us pause to think, shit, that we're going to be missing some Durant games here. Now, that's inevitable. He's missing time. There's no doubt about that. I reckon because it was a contact injury, it's less likely to be an ACL. They're normally more non-contact injuries, so fingers crossed there, but there is definitely a real negative tone about some of the reporting that's coming out about this injury. I know Ethan Sherwood-Strauss had a tweet that he thinks that, from his understanding, that it's not that serious, that it's not serious. It's maybe a month or so, but not a season ender. But that's speculation on his part. So we'll see how that all comes out. But the signing of Matt Barnes tells us that we're going to be missing chunks of Kevin Durant time. And this is another reminder, or not, maybe it's not another reminder. I don't know if I've ever given you this reminder before, but if you play in a league, you should always disable your can't cut list or can't drop list. It should never be there. It should never, because say that we hear that Durant is out for the season, he's on the can't drop list. So someone has Durant, and there is someone out there that they want to go and grab. It's a deeper league. Maybe they want to go grab Matty Barnes, and they can't drop Durant because it takes 2 days for ESPN or Yahoo to update the list, and they can't drop Durant. Never play with a can't drop list. If you're a commissioner, never set it up that way, and tell your commission, don't have a can't drop list. It's really a pain in the ass for times like this, because once we hear the news, that list won't get updated for a day, 2 days, and that might be too late to grab the guy. You want to go grab Koch, you want to go grab Richaun Holmes, you want to go grab Barnes, whoever it is you want to go grab, but you've got no one else you want to drop. And if Durant's done for the year, move on. Like that, the same thing happened with Kyle Lowry the other day. It isn't something that should be in leagues. Now, as for who takes on the value, obviously Clay and Steph and Draymond get extra usage. Pat McCaw might start, or they might give it to Barnesy, but I don't think that either McCaw or Barnes are going to be standard league players in Durant's absence. Barnes might be a 14-team league guy, might. But no one's going to jump into a standard league role. Maybe Zaza Pachulia gets somewhat of a boost as well, so he might be start tickling the fringes of a 12-team leaguer. Not that he already isn't doing that, because he's putting up some decent numbers, but he might become a little bit more relied upon in a situation where Durant is out. So there'll be the names to pay attention to, but obviously we're going to be watching that news. Now, Caleb Thompson, who is watching along live, says he did play a couple of possessions after the injury happened. Yes, you're right, he did. So that gives us somewhat of a positive, but the tenor of everything coming out about the Warriors is not positive. But there is, Caleb, I don't think there's any doubt that he misses time, and I do not think it's an ACL in this case. I would be stunned if he misses the season. Also, shout out, or not shout out, whatever a negative shout out is, to the dickheads that go and retweet old articles about Kevin Durant's foot surgery that says Durant out for the season, to think that people mean that it's now, or people creating fake Sports Center, fake Woj accounts in order to tweet that Durant's out for the season. Get a life. Get something. Ridiculous. Just baffling. I don't think it's an ACL. I've been wrong plenty of times before. I was wrong on Beasley. I was right on Parker, so who knows? I don't think it's going to be an ACL this time, but I think we're looking at at least a 3-week absence from Durant would be my guess, and I'm sure that's going to be shattering news to people who have him in fantasy. Also, almost without, when the Durant injury went out and you put the tweets out that he's out for the game, seriously, the people who write back, oh, he's a pussy, like, come on, man. He's a pussy because he tore a knee ligament? Maybe? Really, he's a pussy. Some people need their priorities really straightened up. Let's talk about this game now. Draymond was big. Again, 14, 8, and 14 with 2 steals and a block and 2 triples. We're going to see a little bit more offensive output from Draymond, I believe, with Durant out. We saw both Clay and Steph take 20 shots, but neither of them were all that successful as the Warriors went down. Clay had 16 points on his 20 shots. That's 25% conversion. He had 3 threes and 2 steals. While we had Curry have 25, 7, and 4 with 3 steals there and 2 triples to Curry. He only went 2 of 2 of 9 from 3. So that's a couple of really poor 3-point shooting performances from Curry in the last 2 games. I thought it would revert in this one, but it didn't. Shawnee Livingston had 14, 3 and 2. He blocked 2 shots. The 14 points is a season high for Livingston, so I wouldn't be banking on him repeating that task, given he hasn't done it at all in the 50 prior games so far this season. But he did step up in Durant's absence while Andre Iguodala played 31 minutes. He was fairly invisible in terms of scoring, just 4 points. But 3 boards, 3 assists, 1 steal, 1 block. They're nice numbers. And Iggy, in a punt points or a point cushion type situation that you're in, he's probably going to absorb a couple of extra minutes and get you some of those peripheral numbers, so that could be useful. Pat McCaw also played 24 minutes and had 8, 2 and 1. And we saw that he played a similar role the last time that Durant missed time with that, just 2 games ago, with that wrist finger issue that he was suffering. So obviously we want Kevin Durant to be healthy. Nobody wants athletes to be injured or miss time. So hopefully that it's a minor situation and he's back in a week or 2 and ready to go. For the Wizards, Markieff Morris, after 2 games battling foul trouble, he was brilliant. 22 and 6 with 2 triples, 2 steals, and a whopping 4 blocks, and did it on 47% shooting. So a really great night from Markieff. Or Braddles Beal was brilliant as well, 25, 4 and 3. 3 steals and 4 triples from Bealey. Johnny Wall had a big night too, 12, 6 and 19 with 2 steals. It wasn't a great shooting night from Wally as he went 30% on 20 attempts, but those assists are obviously really sweet. Otto Porter, 14 and 8, 2 steals, 2 threes, still 9% usage, continues to just annoy me to no end how little he uses the ball, but he's still being productive in that time. And Marcin Gortat, this is an interesting one. 23 minutes for Gortat. So some of it is the Warriors, and we know that centers do struggle against the Warriors or struggle to stay on the court big chunks of time. Now, he had 12 and 12, so his production was fine. But 23 minutes, and it was the first game this season that Jan Mihinmi's looked good. He looked spry, he looked energetic, and Mihinmi played 16 minutes here. So we had Markieff at center, we had Mihinmi at center, we had Gortat at center. So I think that we're going to be seeing the 30-minute Gortat moving forward, and potentially less. So he is a name to watch, but you get into your playoffs in 1 to 2 weeks and he's playing 24 a night on, say he plays 24 a night 2 out of 3 nights, that's pretty much cuttable. But he is someone to watch, and it's a situation to watch. Bojan Bogdanovic didn't play 33 minutes after he did last game. 24 here, 16 and 2 with 3 triples. He's a point streamer, he's a 3-point streamer, and that's about where he sits. Oh, also for the Wizards, Tomas Satoransky was the backup point guard, 11 minutes for 0 points and 1 assist, but that's not going to last because Brandon Jennings is going to sign with the Wizards, and he will likely or definitely leap ahead of Satoransky and push him out of the rotation. And Jennings, I don't think Jennings is going to get enough minutes to be 12 or even 14 team league relevant because John plays so much and Beal plays so much, but he's going to at least provide a reliable option on the bench for the Wizards. And your 16-18 team league, as Brandon Jennings has found himself a new home. Let's talk about Portland and Detroit. It was an overtime game. Dame Lillard was fantastic. 34, 11 and 9 on 52% shooting. He even had a steal. He hit 3 triples and he went 5 of 6 from the line. A big night from Lillard. He has been up and down this season, but this is a couple of nice shooting performances in a row from Dame. A big night, while CJ McCollum also bounced back. 25, 4 and 2 with 4 threes, a steal and a block on 59% shooting. The biggest takeaway, I think, from this game is Yusuf Nurkic. He played 35 minutes and went 19, 7 and 5 with a block. The last game, he was in low 20s with minutes because he had foul trouble. So it appears like the only thing that's keeping Nurkic from big nights and big performances is the fouls. And that's important to note. He should be owned in every league at this point. He was okay from the free throw line, 5 of 7. That's not punt worthy. It's not great, but it's not punt worthy. He should be owned everywhere. Wasn't a great night from both Al-Farouq Aminu and Mo Harkless. Aminu 2 and 6 with a steal and a block in 24, while Mo had 8 and 10 with a block in his 37 minutes. Evan Turner thinks he'll be back in a week or so that's going to severely hamper what Harkless can do. I would still be okay holding Aminu. This was not a great outing from him, but I don't think there's going to be too many other situations where Myers Leonard plays over him, which is what happened at times in this game. Alan Crabb also had a good scoring night, 13 points in 35 minutes, but we know the story with Crabb. On to the Pistons. We talked about Ish already, but on the flip side, Reggie Jackson only 24 minutes for Reg, 10 points, 1 rebound, 4 assists. This is coming off after a 34-minute performance the other game and a really big game. As I said with Ish, I've got no idea what the Pistons are going to do on a game-by-game basis. So for now, I still hold Reggie, but I understand if the fluctuations in minutes and performance isn't something you want to deal with, then move on. If you need to drop him, and at this point you've got to be cutthroat, especially if your playoffs have kicked off. Like if you don't know if you're going to get 20-minute Reggie or 30-minute Reggie, then grab someone that you know is going to get 28 minutes if that's available. But don't cut him for maybe a flash-in-the-pan performance who has no ability to be able to replicate it. So that's the thing you got to be wary of. Has my boy Marcus Smart. Huge night from Smarty. Marcus Morris. I wish it was Marcus Smart. Marcus Morris. 37, 8, and 6. But in true Marcus Morris fashion, it took a lot of minutes, 42 of them, and a lot of shots, 23. But it's really hard to complain about that output. 57% shooting, big assist numbers, big rebounds. But one thing we know about Marcus Morris is it's going to take big minutes, it's going to take big shot attempts, and it's going to be very fluctuable for him to do that again. Not a must-own, but absolutely fine to have on your roster. Kentavious Caldwell-Pope started slow, but had a nice finish, 16-3-3 with 3 steals. That's his third consecutive solid game. While Andre Drummond had 19 and 15 in his 30 minutes. Toby Harris, only 23 minutes, and the tackle box, John Lua, played just 20 as well. Stan Van Gundy seemed to acknowledge there are issues with his lineups and rotation, so don't be shocked if a change goes down. Interestingly, Stan Johnson played more minutes than Toby Harris, Reggie Jackson, and the tackle box, John Lua. Stan played 28 and had 6, 7, and 1 with 2 steals and 2 threes. He has definitely improved his performance from where it was at the beginning of the season. And that was the time where you really had to buy low on him for dynasty formats. And that's the same sort of situation you need to be doing with Trey Lyles from Utah at the moment, because they will bounce back, and Stan's a long way from being a 12 or 14 team league guy, but the minutes are starting to come back together for him, which is good for him, I guess. Not I guess, I know. The Jazz and the Thunder. Pretty big victory for the Thunder here down the stretch. Rudy Gobert for the Jazz, 13 and 10 with 3 blocks. He was big. Gordie Hayward had 19, 2 and 5 with 3 steals, while Georgie Hill had 15, 2 and 8 and a pair of steals. So good numbers from their main players, but not much changes with those guys. I like what Rocket Rodney Hood did though. 31 minutes for Rocket, 18 and 6 with 3 triples. He was on 46% shooting. He had all 3 of his free throws. He's looked very good the last 2 games. I'm not rushing to grab him in 10s, and I'm probably not rushing to grab him in 12s. But he's definitely in the 12-team conversation now, and he probably should be owned in the majority of those formats, but not all of them, but the majority of them. I think it's probably the best way to approach it now. There's been some notes about that Matt Barnes situation. They're not signing Matt Barnes to a 10-day contract. It will be a rest of season contract. So that's another little indication that we expect a decently lengthy absence from Kevin Durant, so that'll be interesting to watch how it goes. Hopefully it's not a bad situation, but it will be a rest of season contract for Barnesy. Joe Ingles, his role is done now that Rocket is back in business, and Joe Johnson had 13 and 5 and 23, still just more of an intermediate to deeper league sized player. On the Thunder, Russ Westbrook had his 30th triple-double for the season, 43, 11, and 10 with 6 triples, and really big percentages as well. Big numbers there. Just a huge performance from Russ. Just missed the monstrous line of the night. Well, Enes Kanter had another strong game. 15 and 9 in 27 minutes with a steal and a block. And this is really encouraging because he did it against Rudy Gobert. And again, the people who were worried about Kanter in his first game back, you don't have anything to worry about. He's going to have this consistent role. I'm not worried about Taj. He doesn't need 30. If he gets 30 minutes or 32 minutes, then he's a top 30, top 40 type of a guy. He doesn't need that to be a useful player in fantasy leagues. Doug McDirt, 25 minutes for him, 16 and 5 with 4 triples. Good night from McDermott. And the Thunder were just ridiculous from 3 in this game. They hit their first 12 threes in a row and ended up going 15 of 22, which is a fairly ridiculous conversion percentage. Doug had a good night. But as usual with Doug, It's points, it's threes, and there's nothing else happening there. So to me, deeper, streamer, that's really about where he sits. Alex Abrines started in place of Oladipo, and he had 11 points with 3 threes and nothing else there, literally. While Taj Gibson, it looks like Taj is going to remain on the bench for the immediate future. 26 minutes for Taj, 7, 3, and 2 with 2 blocks. Nice, but not a standard league contributor. While Domantas Sabonis had 2 points in his 11 minutes, and Steve Adams really struggled against Gobert. 2, 6, and 2 with a pair of blocks. Not his finest moment, but that's what happens often when you take on Rudy Gobert. Let's take a look at the next game. We're talking about the Phoenix Suns. They took on the Memphis Grizzlies, and something I forgot to mention yesterday, there's that weird Devin Booker, Troy Daniels rivalry. Booker got booed roundly in this game as the Grizzlies ended up smashing the Suns. Vince Carter threw an elbow into Devin Booker and got himself ejected. It was quite a fiery outing, and Booker didn't respond very well. 9 points in 36 minutes, 2 triples, a block, but he did it on 27% shooting. His shooting has been much better lately, so hard to really complain, but a little bit of a disappointing night. But that was always on the cards in a matchup against Memphis and their sort of perimeter defense. Eric Bledsoe had 25 and 8 with 2 steals, a block, and 2 triples. A good night from him. But the big thing I think many people wanted to see in Phoenix is what's going on with the big men. And probably the worst situation you could ask for, with Alex Len playing 25 minutes and Alan Williams playing 22, just pretty much a minute split. It was encouraging for Len owners though, 12 and 5 with a steal. You know that I still believe in Alex Len, much to the chagrin of plenty of listeners to this podcast. I think Alex Len can become good, but I reckon we're going to see more of this situation. I think on the majority of nights, Len will play more than Williams. That I am almost 100% convinced of. Now, whether it's 30 to 18 minutes, whether it's 24 to 23 minutes, I don't know. But I think that Len is going to push towards more minutes on most nights. Williams can be a really good per-minute producer. There's no doubt about that. But is he good enough to maintain big playing time? Probably not. 11 and 3 for Big Sauce in his 22 minutes. He had a pair of blocks. If I'm adding anyone, it is Len just for the more minute security that I feel. But Williams can be as good a producer in probably less minutes, so I guess go with your gut. How do you think the Suns will go? Will they continue to run Williams over Len more often, which is a possibility? I just don't necessarily think that will be the case. Marquise Chris stayed out of foul trouble. He played 33 minutes, still had 4 fouls, but at least he got those minutes. 11 and 6 with a block and a 3. I like his upside the most out of all that group. Oh, that's not true. I think Williams has got a better per minute ability to produce, but Chris has got a clearer path to bigger minutes. It's just going to be influenced not by anyone else on the team, just by his own inability to stay out of foul trouble. Tyler Ulis, got to spare a couple of minutes to talk about him. Maybe not that long. 17 minutes for Ulis, 9 points and 7 assists, clearly in the backup point guard role at this point. And that's not going to be an impactful guy for standard leagues, but in 17 minutes a night, he can get you 4 assists. 7's an outlier, a high number, but he can get you 4. He also does not turn the ball over at all. His turnover rate is minuscule. Doesn't turn it over. He gets steals at an extremely high rate as well. So he's a stream option. Even in a 12-team league on the weekend, I need some steals. Like, well, what do I do? I can get Tyler Ulis. I can get assists. I can get... You know, he's improving his efficiency. I think he can become a very efficient scorer. Maybe like a Sean Livingston high field goal percentage point guard. Obviously completely different players, but that's one of the hallmarks of what Livingston does, provides high field goal percentage as a point guard. But Ulis can shoot the 3. Definitely someone to watch. I don't know if he ever becomes a top 100 player for dynasty leagues, but what I am confident with, what I am confident with is that he will be a consistent top 200 guy, and leagues that go 350 deep, 200 deep, getting a point guard who could average you 4 assists per game and is a consistent top 200, top 250 guy, that can have use. So let's just see how he goes, but that's how I view Tyler Ulis. On to the Grizzlies. Marc Gasol, 28, 7, and 5. A weird line from Gasol, because as a center he had 5 assists. Okay, that's less weird, but 5 triples as well. Huge night from him, while Mick Conley had 29, 3, and 8, loves playing against Phoenix. Zach Randolph with another big night, 23 and 8 in 27 minutes for Zebo. Big performance from him, clearly. Still not sold that he's a must-own guy, but I understand the appeal, and it is hard to go past those sort of numbers. While JaMychal Green, there's no appeal there with him. 4 and 3 in 18 minutes for JaMychal. Chandler Parsons, I don't even know what to say about Chandler Parsons anymore. 4 points in 23 minutes. This is the weirdest season I've seen from a player. Not only has he been injured and playing limited minutes, he's forgotten how to play, it appears. There is zero hope of him turning it around this year. Let's just hope that it resets for next year and things can go back to normal for Chandler Parsons. Jim Ennis was back in the rotation, but I'm not sure if he would have been if Vince Carter didn't get ejected. So we saw Ennis play 18 minutes, have 10, 2, and 2 with a 1-1. So he's still productive, but I'm not sure that he would have necessarily played had Vince been there for the whole game. The last game of the night, the Denver Nuggets and the Chicago Bulls. We talked about Nikola Jokic. Danilo Gallinari, the Rooster, had 22 points in 32 minutes, 3 triples. He's back in business, and Wilson Chandler also dropped in 20 in his 29 minutes. Farton Will Barton had 15 and 8, a pair of steals, a block, 29 minutes. Good numbers from Barton. Very hard to argue with those, but minutes consistency might be an issue. He only played 24 the game before. Fine to own in 12s, but I wouldn't be placing a high priority on him. Jamal Murray had 14 points in his 18 minutes. I really like Jamal for long-term stuff, but not much for this year. And Roy Hibbert got into the game. His first game as a member of the Denver Nuggets, played 2 minutes in garbage time in this victory the Nuggets had over the Bulls. Gaz Harris, he's going to be so good. 15, 4, and 3 with 2 steals for Gaza in 36 minutes. Really love watching him play. Love that he's fully healthy. And I think he's going to be a very, very good player. Clearly, he is a must-own guy. While Jameer Nelson, who started again in place of Emmanuel Mudiay, just not a great night. 12, 2, and 1 for Jameer. He can produce better than that, but I don't think you should be having very high hopes on Jameer. And Mason Plumlee, just the 23 minutes, 6, 6, and 5. More your 14 or 16 team league guy in this current setup of things with Denver. For Chicago, I can't believe I'm about to say this, but Rajon Rondo played really well. 24 minutes for Rondo, 19, 4, and 5 with 3 steals, and I can't also believe I'm going to say this, but you got to have a look at him in standard leagues. It's not for everybody. It's not for people who enjoy watching him or enjoy watching good basketball in general, but the assist numbers, the minutes is the most consistent thing here. He's getting 24, 25 a night now. When Michael Carter-Williams and Paul Zipser come back, does that impact Rajon Rondo? I'm not sure if it does. I think one of these guys will be held, one of them, like Carter-Williams, will be held out of the rotation. I think that you can consider adding Rondo, but also remember that this is a night where he went 2 of 2 from the line, which never happens, and he shot 53% from the field, which again, never happens. He led the team in scoring, which again, never happens. So there's a lot of flukiness with his performance, but his recent numbers had been impressive, and impressive enough for me to think, you know what, you could do a lot worse than Rondo. Jaren Grant started, played 12 minutes, had 7 points. There's nothing there at all. Cam Payne played 17 off the bench and struggled. 2 of 10 shooting, 6 points and 2 triples, 2 rebounds and 3 assists. I still strongly believe in Cameron Payne. He looked poor at times in this game. His shot wasn't there, but as I do like to say, okay, he shot 2 of 10. Maybe he shoots 4 of 10, and then it's 10, 2, and 3 in 17 minutes with 2 triples. And you go, shit, you know what? In 17 minutes, that's good. Play 34 minutes, and then we're talking about 20 points, 6 assists, 4 triples, 4 rebounds. And you go, that's a brilliant line. And that's where his potential is. He can rack up stats in short amount of time. He's just got to get that shot to start falling, and I think he's the best shooter out of the entire group of these point guards pretty comfortably. Not that it's necessarily reflected in his numbers so far. But if the people... Look, I got a question today from someone, is Cameron Payne droppable? He was never ownable. He wasn't a guy to pick up in 12-team leagues, or probably even 14-team leagues, just considering the crunch of minutes there. Now, there is a chance that he plays 20 minutes down the stretch and becomes the starter, but he's not going to play 30, I don't think. But it's more an investment for the future, for dynasty formats, where I think that his ceiling is top 50. He might not get there, but I think that that's what he can do. Jim Butler was putrid, 8, 4, and 3 with 3 steals. He only hit 3 of his 13 shots. I hope we're not seeing the post-All-Star meltdown that is Jim Butler, that has been a part of his game for a while. 19, 4, and 6 for Dwayne Wade. And Bob Portis had his best performance as a starter. 12 and 6 with 3 steals and 2 triples in 28 minutes for Bob. I am not convinced that he will be able to maintain this size of role or this level of production. Remember, it did come against Denver, one of the worst defenses in the league. You're also got to put that caveat on Rajon Rondo's performance. I'm not in on Portis. Mirotic struggled, but it wasn't wasn't a total write-off from Mirotic. 6-1-2 with a 3 and a block, but only the 20 minutes. I am still owning Mirotic over Portis in every circumstance that I can think of. I don't rate Portis, but yeah, if he puts together another couple of lines at 28, 29 minutes, then the narrative changes. But I still do think that Mirotic is the better player, and he's the better fantasy option. So that's the way that I'd be sticking there. Decent night from Robin Lopez as well. But at this point, I'd rather them just unleash Cristiano Felicio and let him play the minutes at centre. Big minutes for Denzel Valentine too, 7-7 in his 27 minutes. He's a little bit of a way off from being a standard league guy. Let's crack on now to the last game of the night. Charlotte and the Lakers. Good win for Charlotte in the end. Kemba Walker was great, and he's been great over the last 2 to 3 games. 35-7 with 5 triples, while Frank the Tank, he started, he played 36 minutes, even with Cody Zeller back. 24-12, 4 triples, 3 assists, and a block. But it's not the full story because, as I said, Zeller came off the bench. Zeller had a minutes limit. What happens to Frank? Now, Frank has been fantastic. I've been a big supporter of Frank for the last couple of years. And, I think that he can become a standard league guy in only 28, 29 minutes a game. But will he won't continue at 36. Look, he might start for the next week. But I do really think they need Zeller back in that role. But I can see Frank playing 14 minutes behind Marvin Williams. I can see Frank playing 18 minutes behind Cody Zeller and still getting 30 plus minutes. There's Miles Plumlee's terrible. Christian Wood's not going to come in and demand all these centre minutes. And Michael Kidd-Gilchrist might get some minutes at the 4 as well. But I reckon we might see a situation where instead of Zeller getting 30, we see Zeller getting 27. So 27 minutes at the 5 for Zeller, 21 for Frank there. And then he mops up 8 or 9 minutes or 10 minutes at backup power forward with Gilchrist getting some of them and Marvin Williams playing 30. That's how I see it rolling. So if you own Frank, you just keep holding him. And I think that grabbing Zeller might be okay, but his ceiling's not high enough to make him a priority ad, in my opinion. I think that Kaminsky's fantasy ceiling is much higher. I think Zeller's a much better player, but I think Kaminsky's fantasy ceiling is higher. Michael Kidd-Gilchrist had 10 and 5 with a pair of steals. He only played 27 minutes, and I've got a feeling that this sort of minutes crunch is going to affect him. Same with Marvin Williams, who played well though. Marvin, 16 and 6 with 4 triples and 2 blocks. Jeremy Lamb, who blew up in the last game, this is the Jeremy Lamb that we know and love. 3 points in 19 minutes. Consistency will continue to be an issue for him, I would think, moving forward. And speaking of Zeller, I didn't touch on what he actually did. 6 and 5 in 18 minutes. On to the Lakers. D'Angelo Russell, 23, 1 and 9 with 2 steals and 5 triples. Just a special shout out to people who tell me that D'Angelo Russell is terrible. He's going to be a top 50 player post All-Star break. He's already a top 40 guy in the few games that we've had after the break. They're giving him the ball, they're letting him shoot, they're letting him play minutes, and it's working out for him. He might not be the best point guard in the NBA, and he's a long way from being that or will ever become that. But he can be a really impactful fantasy guy, a top 40 guy for many, many years to come. And I think we're going to see a top 50 stretch from him after the All-Star break. Jordy Clarkson had 16, 3 and 3 in his 34 minutes, while Uncle P hit 5 triples for all 15 of his points and had no other stats, literally no other numbers. 15 points, 5 threes, no boards, no assists, no steals, no blocks. Went to the free throw line exactly 0 times. Weird night. The Lakers are confusing. Now, we're going to give Ivica Zubac more minutes. We do want to see him start down the line. Now, in all fairness to Luke Walton, he did say that down the line does not mean now, and it will mean probably in a couple of weeks' time. But to see Zubac's minutes go backwards from 22 minutes down to like 14 minutes down to 8 minutes is a confusing development. He only played 8 minutes here and had 4 and 2. Now, if Zubac gets 30 a night, he's a must-own player. If he gets 27 a night, he's probably a must-own guy. But until they say, you know what, we're doing this, holding on to 10-minute a night players when there are other guys out there is probably not your best strategy. Brandon Ingram played 42 minutes and had 8, 5, and 3. He is a very, 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 very long way away from being a standard league contributor, and you should think along those lines if you're deciding whether you're adding him to your team, and I don't think that you should be. All right, that covers all of the games from what day? From Tuesday. I'm going to take a quick break, and then we're going to be back, and we're going to preview the 11-game Wednesday slate for DFS that we've got coming up. Alright guys, we're back. Let's talk perfect DFS lineups from Tuesday on FanDuel. Dame Lillard had 58.7, Russ had 63.2, Fart and Will Barton went for 30.1, and Rocket Rodney Hood went for 23.2. The small forwards Marcus Morris 55.8 and Doug McDermott at 23.5. Power forwards Julius Randle 62.6 and Frank the Tank at 43.9, and at centre Marc Gasol had 46.9, and that's a total of 407.7 for the full salary, the full $60,000 there. Over on DraftKings, Dame had 64.25, McDermott at 25.75, Marcus Morris 57.5, Markieff Morris at 43.5, Frank the Tank at 43.5 as well, Ish Smith at 38.75, Randall 65.5, and Nikola Jokic at 60.5 for a total of 404.25, and that cost $50,000. We have got 11 games, so there's lots of interesting guys to pay attention to for DFS for Wednesday. The first one of those games we're going to take a look at is the New York Knicks and the Orlando Magic. Billy Hernangomez has been downgraded to doubtful for the Knicks, so we are going to see a lot of Jeff Hornacek's cock. Kylo Quinn will start in this game. You're going to see some minutes for Porzingis at center as well. And maybe we'll get some Maurice Ndour or Marshall Plumlee, but the majority of these minutes are going to Kylo Quinn. If Billy, or unless Billy makes some sort of miraculous recovery. Also, just letting you know, that poll I ran yesterday, Billy Hernangomez got the 60% nod as to who will become the better Hernangomez brother. I couldn't disagree with it more. That's not true. I'm not that much on one show side, but I'm definitely on one show side. I think he is going to become the better Hernangomez, but the 600 people that voted, 60% of them said it's going to be Billy that gets that done. On the Magic side of things, Asa Gordon is listed as questionable with a right quad contusion, so we'll be monitoring that. If he is out, we're going to see more Jeff Green at that spot. My name is Jeff. We're going to see more Damian Rudesh as well playing at power forward, and maybe Mario Hezonja moves up to power forward, as Frank Vogel teased in one of his batshit crazy press conferences over the All-Star break. CJ Watson, if he is out, or if he plays, I don't know if they start him or if they keep going with Lord Alfred. I would hope they keep going with Lord Alfred, but I'm not sure. Let's talk about the game. The Magic are favoured by 1.5, and the total is 215. Now let's talk point guards. We've got Derrick Rose at 6,300. It's a great matchup. Really think it's a positive one. But Rose needs to do quite a bit to get to 6,300, and he's just not that sort of player on most nights. It's a tournament punt, and that's about it. Because look, in the last 5, he's averaging 28 points, which doesn't cut it, but he has had a 41-point game there. So there's a little bit of GPP upside, and the matchup would make you go, maybe I'll go that way. There's no Brandon Jennings around, so we're going to see extra minutes from Derrick Rose. Jeff Hornacek said that. But I'm not fully convinced that it's going to be a great spot. As for Lord Alfred, he is at 5,800. He gets a boost if CJ's out. Now, his last game, he put up 46 points, which was an absolute monster. But I'm not fully convinced that he is going to be able to maintain that level of production. Well, I'm not convinced at all he's going to be able to maintain that level of production. And 5,800 feels like it's a little bit high. I would rather take him over Derrick Rose in a GPP, though. The other point guards, we've got Augustine, we've got Watson, Rotten Ronnie Baker as well. I don't really think that he's going to have much of an impact. That's just an excuse for me to debut a new nickname. At shooting guard, Evan Fournier is at 5,300. Has definitely been a little bit disappointing, averaging only 23 points over the last 5 games. But that doesn't totally scare me off Fournier. I think he can be a useful player. And at that salary, there's definite use for him. Now, on DraftKings, where he comes at 59, I'll probably have 0 pieces of that. But I like it on FanDuel, where he comes in at 53. As for Courtney Lee, who's been putting up some big numbers, 36 in the last game, and he's averaging 27 over the last 5. He's at 4,900. So that salary, it just feels too high. He's at 46 on DraftKings as well. And I do think you can do a little bit better than spending that cash on Courtney Lee. His numbers recently have been impressive. There's no doubt about that. But I'm not fully into considering him a must-own guy or a must-roster guy. He's a long way from that. He might be a GPP type of a player. Small forwards, Terrence Ross, 5,200 for Terry. He put up 40 in the last game. I like it. I feel pretty good that he's going to get shots, he's going to get touches, and he's going to get pretty decent run here. So I think that Terry Ross is is definitely someone that you can consider. As for Mallow at $8,000, maybe a little bit high, especially with Porzingis back in the fold. He's at 81 on FanDuel. So he's 8,000 on DraftKings, 81 on FanDuel. Probably just a little bit too highly priced. At power forward, I would love Asa Gordon if we knew that he's playing. He's at $5,100, and he has been putting up much better numbers in the last couple of games. But I don't know if he's going to play. So that's obviously the rub with Aaron Gordon. Is he in? Is he out? If he's in, and it's the first game of the night, so we're going to find out, I like him as an option if he plays. As for Porzingis at 6,400, I reckon that you can do better than that. Just reading a comment that came through from Miguel Vargas. He was a little bit frustrated at Zubac's performance. Totally understand that. As for Porzingis, 6,400 for him. Yeah, I just think it's too expensive. He's coming back from this ankle problem. You need him to go 35, 36 points. I think he's a little bit off that at this point. So no for me. The center situations where it's really at though. Nikola Vucevic is at 6,400. It's been putting up really impressive numbers, and we've seen, even Jahlil Okafor put up good numbers against the Knicks. So this is a great spot for Vooch. I really like him here. Cash and GPP is very hard to go past. But the one guy, or one of the guys you can go past him with, is the guy that's on the other side, and that's Kylo Quinn. Kylo Quinn, if you believe in revenge games, he's playing against his former team. Kylo Quinn is a guy that over the last 5 games is averaging 44 fantasy points per 36 minutes. He will be the starting center, and there is no other centers on this team. Again, you shouldn't include Ndua or Plumlee. I'm not saying that Cock's playing 36 minutes, but I'm feeling pretty good about him playing at least 26 or 27, and he doesn't need that. At $4,700, which is just ludicrously low on FanDuel, he should be in every single one of your cash lineups, I believe. In tournaments, he's going to be highly owned. Maybe you fade and move a different direction, but you are going to have so much Cock in your lineups that at $4,700, it's almost impossible to go past. Now, he's got a real chance to shit the bed, but there's no other options unless Hornacek just decides, you know what, I'm going to do the thing that I should have done initially and play Porzingis at center. And I'm not sure he's going to do that. 5,200 for Cock on DraftKings doesn't dissuade me. No problem. Load up on Kylo Quinn. Really going to enjoy seeing him go out there because you know that I've been a big Kylo Quinn fan for plenty of time. If Gordon does miss, we might see some extra Bismack Biyombo, so he wouldn't be a terrible guy to have a look at. In general, he would, but he's a minimum salary player. If they decide to go Vooch and Biyombo together, which they could for a few minutes, maybe pushes Biyombo to 22 minutes, that might be interesting. I wouldn't bank on it though, because again, he just has no ability to have any sort of offensive game whatsoever. Miguel also chimes in and says that these are running way better than the YouTube live streams. So thank you, Miguel. That's the sort of feedback that I want. So this is the plan that I fix up all the streaming issues. The plan going forward with the live videos is to stream them live on Facebook, facebook.com/RedRockBasketball. So they normally go to air as soon as the last game ends. There's always some differences in those depending on other things that are on, but that's generally when they go to air. And then the video will be uploaded to YouTube after, and the podcast will be released in standard podcast form on iTunes, Stitcher, TuneIn, Google Play, Audio Boom, wherever else you want to find podcasts. So that's how it will go, but it will go live, and you can interact live with the show and ask questions and clarify and ask me to repeat something or challenge an assertion that I have. You can do that via Facebook because the videos are streaming much, much better through Facebook. Let's talk about the Wizards. They're taking on the Toronto Raptors. The Raptors are favored by 4. The total is 211.5 points. We know that Kyle Lowry is out for Toronto, so we're going to be getting more doses of Corey Joseph. We'll start with Corey. He's at 5,100, only 18 points in the last game, and FanDuel's bumped him by $700. That turns me off a little bit because Corey Joseph's fine as a starter. He's a nice standard league sort of guy, but he's hardly a prolific point producer. And then you get to John Wall matchup. So to me, in this situation, on DraftKings at 5,400, you can forget that. There's no way. At 51 on FanDuel, he has marginal appeal, but it's really, really marginal. And with 11 games on, I can't see myself going down that route. 10,400 for Johnny Wall. He had another 47 today against the Warriors. At this point, you feel like you're just going to get 47 or 48 out of him almost every night. Now, the point guard matchup has been a negative against the Raptors, but that's with Kyle Lowry in there, and Kyle Lowry isn't in there, so it's not going to be as negative a matchup for John taking on Corey Joseph. Joseph's a good defender. He's not quite as pesky as what Kyle Lowry is. So John can be considered at 10,400. I wouldn't be locking it up, though. He's at 10-2 on DraftKings, the same story there. I don't think Brandon Jennings is going to be ready. Apparently he'll be signing on Wednesday, so maybe he plays this afternoon or that afternoon, but I'm not 100% sure regardless. We wouldn't be using him. At shooting guard, Brattles Beal is at 7,400, really putting up 35 almost every single night. Yeah, fine. Not the best play out there, definitely, but he's got marginal value, and I would more look to him as a GPP guy, whereas DeMar DeRozan, they have gone sick on DeMar DeRozan at FanDuel, 10,200. He's getting a 40% usage. He is averaging 49 points the last 3 games without Lowry out there. So, big numbers. But 10,200 just makes me say, nah, I'm good. You can have that. Now, on DraftKings at 9,300, it's a little bit better, and I would be okay with that. I am okay with that. He's averaging 52 those last 3 games. But 10,200 on FanDuel makes it a pass. At small forward, Damari Carroll's at 41. He's giving us basically nothing. So I think we'll leave Damari alone. And Otto Porter at 6,400. Had 32 points today, but 32 points at 6,400 doesn't cut it. And he had a good game today. He just doesn't touch the ball enough for me to spend 6,400 on him. On DraftKings, he's at 6,000. It's a little bit better, but I still think there are better directions to go. Bojan Bogdanovic, just a flyer. At that almost minimum salary, but no interest. And same with PJ Tucker. The power forward, Serge Ibaka, 6,800. They have gone crazy on his prices. And this matchup's really good. The Wizards and power forwards, it's a really good situation. He's going to play at center as well. But I'm not convinced that 6,800 is a great price tag for Serge. Definitely GPPs, definitely, but not for cash. 6,500 for him on DraftKings is a little bit more palatable, and I wouldn't completely hate that, but it's got some use over there. Mark Heath at 6,600, so $200 cheaper than Ibaka. Had a big game today, Mark Heath. Still somewhat of a positive matchup against the Raptors, but I'm not fully feeling him at that price. 63 on DraftKings, same story, not interested. The centers here, write these guys off. Marcin Gortat, Jonas Valanciunas, Jan Mahinmi. I can't consider using any of them. As I said, Valanciunas is barely going to play 20 minutes. But we've seen with Gortat of the last couple of games that his minutes have been reducing as well with Mahinmi in there. So he might not get 36. He might play 28. He might play 23 as he played today. He might play 31. And at 6,500, I have no confidence in Gortat producing anywhere near enough value to give us back that sort of a salary. All right, let's move on to the next game now. We've got the Dallas Mavericks. They're taking on the Atlanta Hawks. The Hawks are favored by 5.5 points, and the total is 195, an absolutely putrid total, the worst of the entire day. So there's going to be a lot of me saying not in this matchup. There are a few guys that are interesting though. Let's start with the point guards. Yogi Ferrell, jigs up, man. 5,200. But if there's a team that you're going to get back on track against, it's the Hawks. So Yogi, GPP, sure, but he's playing only 29 minutes a game because we're getting more Seth Curry. There's Devin Harris in there. We're not going to see 35, 36 of Yogi because he hasn't been able to carry that recently. At 5,200, he just feels a little bit highly priced. In the GPP, sure. His highest score in the last 5 has just been 28 points, though. He hasn't had any big games recently. As for the Hawks, Dennis Schroeder, he's back starting. He is at 6,600. He had 33 in the last game. The sentence is going to be not in this matchup. The Mavericks have been pretty good against point guards all season, and the pace is so slow that there are going to be other options out there that suit you better. At shooting guard, Seth Curry is at 6,100. He's been playing fantastically, averaging 34 over the last 3 games. He's at 59 on DraftKings. I've got no problem with using Seth Curry. I think he's a solid option for both cash and for GPPs as well. On the Hawks side of things, Timmy Hardaway at 54, back in a bench role, and he's only averaging 17 over the last 3. You cannot commit to him in cash in any sense, and especially with Taurean Prince rising up, I can't see Hardaway getting enough playing time to be worth a salary that comes over $5,000, which is where he currently is. At small forward, the pencil Harrison Barnes is at 6,100, a great matchup for him here. I don't feel all that good about him on FanDuel anyway, using him in cash, but I think that he's worth looking at. On DraftKings at 6,000, I'm a little bit more interested in that. He's averaging 31 over the last three, and at 6,000, that's not quite where it needs to be, but I've got a fair degree of confidence in Barnesy at that price with the pricing or the scoring structure over there. I think that the pencil is definitely worth a look. As for Torian Prince, he's up to 3,900 now on FanDuel after a couple of strong outings, had 32 points in the last game. He's definitely not reliable, and the matchup's a shit one, but 3,900 and more impressively 3,400 over on DraftKings. The guy is averaging 25 minutes a game in his last three and 23 fantasy points. Why wouldn't you have or at least put him into your GPP player pool if they're going to continue to prioritize developing him and giving him 25 to 26 minutes, giving him those minutes over guys like Mike Dunleavy if he happens to play. I believe Dunleavy's actually out of this one, or guys like even Mike Muscala. He's been getting some minutes over, so he is an interesting guy to pay attention to. Tabo, big game from him in the last one. 26 points on FanDuel. He is at $3,700. That came with just a whole array of threes and steals and blocks, which he can do from time to time. But again, the matchup's terrible. I don't have full faith in Tabo being able to do that again. So I would maybe consider it a GPP, but I wouldn't feel all that strongly about it. And he's already jumped up by $400 on DraftKings up to $3,700 as well. I'm just not feeling strongly about Tabo being able to give me 27 points a night. That's just not who I think he is. Kent Bazemore, he's at 4,400 GPPs, and even then, I wouldn't feel all that strongly about it. At power forward, I really like Nerlens Noel here. He is at $5,500. Has struggled a little bit in the first two games, but I think that at 55, I have a decent degree of confidence of getting 27, 28 points out of Nerlens Noel here. I'm not 100% in on it, just because I don't know if he starts or if he plays 24 or 30 minutes, but there's a level of intrigue. At 53 on DraftKings, the same story. Paulie Millsap is down to 7,400 due to a recent level of turds, I guess is probably the best way of putting that. Maybe it's not the best way. I probably could find a more eloquent way of phrasing it. But he's been bad. But the last game he was back. He had 36 points. He's averaging 38 the last three times he's taken on Dallas. He's at 7,400. I'm not sure that Harrison Barnes or Dirk Nowitzki are going to pose too much of a problem for Paul Millsap. The matchup, though, is the real issue. I think he's a GPP guy, Paulie here. He could easily drop a 50. We've seen him do it plenty of times. I'm just not all that confident. As for Dirk at 6,100, he's been playing under 30 minutes the last couple of games. And if Dirk's getting under 30 minutes, then he's probably getting under 30 fantasy points, and 6,100 is not going to work. At 5,700 on DraftKings, that's definitely a little bit more interesting for Dirk over there. He's averaging 30 points the last three games. A little bit of appeal, not the strongest option, but definitely someone to not completely disregard on that site. The centers, Dwight Howard is the only center listed in this game unless we care about Salah Mejri. Dwight is at $7,000. He had 35 before being ejected in that last game against Boston. The pace bothers me. 7,000 is fine, but DraftKings at 6,500. That's a price drop of $400. I like where that's heading. That's useful, but it's not a cash play to me. Your cash center is probably going to be Kylo Quinn almost guaranteed. So Dwight becomes a pivot point for GPPs, but not a strong one. All right, let's move on to the next game now. We're going to be talking about the Philadelphia 76ers. They're taking on the Miami Heat. The Heat are favored by 8.5 points, and the total is 212. Hopefully we get some Joel Embiid information so that all of us in seasonal leagues can cut the cord and be ready to move on. Will Reed, who's missed the last couple of games with a calf issue, he has been, he's listed as questionable. Ankle bursitis he's currently got. It was a calf initially, now it's an ankle problem. If he is out, then we're going to see some more Akaro White and a little bit more Jimmy Johnson as well. One of these days I'm going to sing this. And then you'll all turn off and unsubscribe. He is our martyr. He is our only son. But we'll talk about him in a sec. Let's start with the point guard. Let's start with another Johnson, Tyler Johnson. He's at 5,700. It's a good matchup for Tyler. He's been consistently below the 5,700. Had a couple of decent games, but I'm not thinking that he is going to be a priority guy to roster. But if we head to DraftKings, I think he almost does become a priority guy because at 5,100, that's really cheap. I think that he can come out there and put up 27 or 28 points, and at 5,100, that works really well. I wouldn't be locking him in as my cash game point guard of the night or anything like that, but he is a guy that if you want to pivot to a different direction or look in another way, then I like him at that cheaper price. That price really works. TJ McConnell, I think, is going to have many people moving off him. He's at 5,500, really bothered in the last game. Only played 18 minutes or 20 minutes due to foul trouble and had 12 points. But he's averaging still 26 points over the last 5 games, including that 12-point stinker. The Heat have been good against point guards all season. That has eased off recently. I think that TJ is a low-owned point guard to consider in tournaments. As for Goran Dragic, he's now at 7,800, putting up some pretty impressive numbers. I don't think he's a must-play guy, though. I love him on DraftKings, where he's at 71. I really do like that price over there. I think he becomes a very solid, not quite core, but close to it type of point guard. Spanish Chocolate had a good game in the last one, but I wouldn't be relying upon that moving forward. That's probably the kindest way for me to put that. At shooting guard, Gerald Henderson had 25 in the last game and actually is averaging 23 points over his last 3 games. And at $3,800, that's fine for a tournament. I wouldn't be relying upon Gerald Henderson to do that consistently, although he has been relatively consistent. As for Dion Waiters, the bane of my prognosticating powers, he is at 7,100. Now, he's been putting up good numbers, but he only had 27 points in the last game, and at 7,100, that's not cutting it. I'm sorry, Dion, but I'm not spending $7,100 against you. Now, you can make, he's playing against Philadelphia, hometown. Well, it's not in it's in Miami for a start. He hasn't done well against Philadelphia, really. 27-point average across the last 3. At 7,000, this is just a long way of me saying I'm not spending $7,100 on Dion Waiters. Wayne Ellington, Sauce Castillo, Joshie Richardson, no interest in any of those guys. How about Bob Cobb? He's at 7,300. That's probably getting a bit high. Now, it's a negative matchup, and it has been a negative for small forwards against the Heat for the majority of the season. I love Bob Cobb, but I'm not spending 7,300. The odds are that you're going to go under that, and that's not the sort of spot you should be taking in cash game roster construction. In a GPP, yeah, but how much higher is his upside on 7,300? Is it 50? Probably not. Is it 40? Then it's not a big return on investment, so I don't really think that Bob Covey is a great option at that inflated price tag. The power forwards is where it gets real interesting. We've got Jimmy Johnson at $6,000. GPP, I'd be looking at him. I wouldn't be getting too caught up on him as a cash game play, but we've got a couple of other guys who are really interesting. Dario Saric is at 7,600. He has been giving you 40 points a night for the last 3 games. The matchup is not a good one. The salary has jumped by $600, but I don't think that he's someone to write off. Now, I'm not sure that I'd love using him as a as a tournament play, but I feel pretty bloody good about his consistency level for cash. Over the last 5 games, he is averaging 38 points. His highest score is 41. His lowest score is 34. So we're talking about just bang, 36, 37 every night, pretty much. Just really, really consistent performances. So I like Saric for cash because of that reason. On DraftKings is at 7,700, so a little bit more expensive. Not fully into him over there, but I wouldn't have an issue with you using him. Now, the other guy that's really going to be interesting is Richaun Holmes, who's listed as a power forward on FanDuel. He had 31 points in the last game. He's averaging 29 despite coming off the bench behind Jahlil Okafor. He's played more minutes and been more productive than Okafor in 2 of the 3 games since Nerlens Noel was traded. But I don't have confidence that he is going to start over Okafor. I don't think that's happening in a million years. And I don't have confidence. I don't have more than 50% confidence that he's going to play more minutes. I think I've got about 70% confidence that they play equal minutes. But will that be enough to justify a $4,500 price tag on Holmes' head? Is it $4,700 on DraftKings? So yeah, you can throw him in a tournament and hope that Okafor gets abused by Whiteside, which should happen. And Holmes can come in and block, 5 shots and have 3 steals and go for 16 points with a 3. He can do all that stuff. But my confidence in it is not high enough, especially when Cock's out there on the board. Although they do play different positions. My mistake. But yeah, Holmes has has a lot of GPP ups, a lot of appeal, really. The centers, let's talk Okafor. He's at 5,300. In the game against the Knicks, he had 42 points. So that was good. And the game against the Warriors, he had 2 points. I can't see how against Whiteside, he's going to be able to do anything. Now, Whiteside's not a great defender. We know that. But he blocks shots. But I'm more talking about, can he stay on the court offensively against Whiteside? Now, Whiteside, again, not a great player, but Dragic driving into the lane, creating open spots for dump-offs. Okafor's going to get lost. And in the end, he's not that good. 5,300, you can have a look as a GPP option for sure. And I think his ownership will be pretty low. But I want nothing to do with it for cash at all. I don't think the matchup is brilliant. It's all right. But there's you can make a scenario up in your head where you go, he's just going to get destroyed by Whiteside, and that could really happen. And Okafor's a shit rebounder as it is. Whiteside's one of the best, and that could really, he could just get towed up. Now, Holmes is not a good rebounder. Better than Okafor, though. As for Whiteside, he's at $8,800. He's done very well against Philadelphia in the past. Centers have, historically this season, done very well against the Sixers, even when Joel Embiid was playing. I like Whiteside. 8,300 on DraftKings, 8,800 over on FanDuel. No problem considering him a guy on both of those sites for both cash and for DFS. Let's move on to the next one now. We've got the Detroit Pistons and the New Orleans Pelicans. The Pelicans are favored by 1.5, and the total is 209. DeMarcus Cousins is not playing. He is out. He is suspended. So remember that. We've got Jarrett Jack, who missed the last game. He is listed as questionable with his knee issue, so that's a situation we need to monitor there also. Let's go to the point guards. Drew Holiday is at 7,700. Okay? Remember what Drew Holiday was doing before Boogie Cousins arrived? The answer there is kicking ass. He is at 6,900 on DraftKings. That is fantastic at 6,900 on DraftKings. Love that, love that, love that. He is going to be relied upon to do a lot. Now, it's 77 on FanDuel. I'm not as in love with it, but it's still bloody good. Because, again, look back to the game logs of what Holiday was doing before the All-Star break. Because that's what we're going to see again. I don't think Reggie Jackson is going to be able to slow him down too much. He's definitely someone that we can use. And DraftKings at 6,900, you should smash that. Just smash it as hard as you can. As for the Pistons point guards, who knows? That's the answer. 5,300 for Reggie Jackson. Do we get 30-point Reggie Jackson? Do we get 15-point Reggie Jackson? Tournaments only, and the same goes with Ish, who had 38 today at 4,400. We just got no idea what they're going to do in that spot. At shooting guard, Kentavious Caldwell-Pope's at 5,400. I don't have great trust in him, but he's a very good GPP upside sort of a player. At 59 on DraftKings, I think that takes away a little bit of his edge, though. Each-one more at 3,900. I like that for GPP, especially if Jarrett Jack can't go. Hopefully we get some extra each-one more minutes and some extra each-one more touches. But he hasn't been great since Cousins and Hield and Evans and all those guys were traded. But there is a big game in each-one more coming. I know there's one coming, but the defense of Kentavious Caldwell-Pope could be a problem. GPPs for him. Only at small forward, Dante Cunningham is going to have to play extra minutes. Now, the Pelicans could go with Alexia Jinsa, Anthony Davis frontline, as they did a couple of times before Boogie arrived, or they could go back to the Dante Cunningham, Anthony Davis situation. So Cunningham's minutes are going to be way up there again. He's a minimum salary player who's a less than minimum salary producer. But if you want to go weird, maybe he gets you 22, 23 points. It could happen. I'm not fully into it. But at 3,000 on DraftKings, that's really interesting in a GPP. Allows you to smash some of those other big guys into your lineup or big name players. And if he gets 20 points, then it's 6-7x easily from Dante. That's a possibility. Marcus Morris at 5,900. I'm pretty sure we're not going to be expecting him to come up with 56 points again like he did today. That's an unrealistic expectation. But defense-wise, the Pelicans aren't interesting in terms of being able to stop him. He's already averaging 35 over the last 5, so I've got no problem considering Marcus Morris an option. I probably wouldn't lock him as a core guy, but I think there's something there for him. Now, is it 6,000 on DraftKings? I'm not fully invested there. I don't think that's going to be a great spot at that extra salary situation. Solly Hill, Stan Johnson, no. At power forward, Toby Harris in the tackle box, John Lua. I can't trust what they're going to do. They're definitely no-goes for me. And Donatas Montiunas, he might be the guy that gets some extra minutes instead of Ajinça. He's a minimum salary player. If we hear that Montiunas is starting, then go ahead at minimum. He is my really out of left field, out of the blue guy that could maybe get a tournament headed your way. It's not a high probability, but I don't think that too many people will be on Donatus Motiejunas. Now, Anthony Davis, FanDuel has gone, you know what? Boogie's out. Screw you guys. Here we go. 11,600, they've said. And I've said no. That's a lot. Now, he was putting up good numbers. He's had a great record against Detroit. But that's a lot. That's so much. Do you expect 56 points out of Anthony Davis? He's been averaging 53 in the last 3, so that's good. And that's been with Boogie there. But I'm not sure that I want to spend $11,600 on him. Now, on DraftKings, they haven't been as aggressive. He's at 10-4, so he's in play there. FanDuel, I might look at him as a GPP guy at that salary. Again, he's averaging 64 points the last 3 times he's taken on Detroit. Centers, Andre Drummond, 8,100. You know Drummond. It's GPPs only. He's got a good record against New Orleans. I reckon we're in for a 40-pluser from Drummond, but I wouldn't want to put my cash lineup on that. 76 on DraftKings. He is making an appealing cash game play, but no. It's real tough to do, and I don't think that's, in the end, going to be a winning proposition for you. Alexei Ajinça, he's had some decent games. So if we hear that he is starting, he is at 3,500 as well. In the last 5 games, he put up 31 points in one of those in 17 minutes. So he could get you 25 points, no doubt. So there is some openings there with Boogie out as to what the Pelicans do in that front court. Now, Matt Doan just joined the live broadcast, left a comment, says, I'm late to the party. Is the Matt Barnes signing a sign that Durant is out for the season? I don't think so. Matt, but I do think that it means we're going to be seeing multi-week absence, probably 3 to 4 weeks would be my guess. But it is, I know a lot of people will think that. I don't think that that's necessarily that indication, but I think we're going to be looking at multi-weeks and at least more than a 2 10-day contract period, which is 20 days, clearly. So I reckon we're looking at 3 to 4 weeks here for Durant. That's how I view that. Thanks for chiming in with the live comment there, Matt. All right, let's move on now to the next game. Where are we? Denver and Milwaukee. The Bucks are favored by 3, and the total is 226.5 points. Michael Beasley, as I said, is out with the next 3 games at least with that knee hyperextension. Let's talk point guards. I'm not going to talk about what Jason Kidd should do because he should start Malcolm Brogdon. Will he do it? That's the concern. So we've got Daly, who comes in at 3,800. He is averaging 12.8 points over his last 5 games. The matchup against Denver looks so good. It's such a good matchup for point guards. Even Rajon Rondo put up good numbers. But I just don't have too much faith in Daly. GPPs, sure, because if things get going and he hits more than 20% of his shots, if Kidd's going to continue to fillet him and give him 32 minutes, then it's fine. But I don't have full confidence in it. Now, as for Brogo at 5,100, that's Malcolm Brogdon for you people who aren't aware. Brogo's at 5,100. He has been crushing it. He had 31 points in the last game in 31 minutes. Love the matchup for Brogdon. Really hard to go past him at 5,100. Now, there's still not full confidence in it because we know what I think of Jason Kidd. But the play continues to shine, and without Beasley there, we're going to get Chrissy Middleton back. We're going to get Yanni at the 4. We're going to get Chrissy at the 3. Snelly at the 2, and we're stretching our wing depth here. So Snell's going to push to the 3 when Middleton comes off. So we're going to get Daly and Brogdon backcourts together. So I feel pretty good about Brogo. Not as good as I could feel, but I feel pretty good. Jameer, 5,600 for Jameer Nelson. Wasn't a great night from him, just the 24 points. He's been putting up some okay numbers, but the Bucks have been relatively, or very good actually, against point guards defensively. So that's, I guess that's somewhat of a concern for him. And I think there are better options out there. Jamal Murray just not going to play enough for us to care. At shooting guard on FanDuel, Gianni Antetokounmpo is at 11,100. Definitely stunk in the last game with 28 points, but it's the Nuggets, man. This could be a monster. Now, Gianni has not done well against Denver in his last couple of games, averaging just 29 points in the last 3 games. But I like him as a GPP guy. In fact, I don't even hate it as a cash guy if you want to spend up at shooting guard. The upside there in this really positive matchup is great. I'm not fully sold, but I am pretty excited about it. I think there's some definite value in him. Gaz Harris is at 5,500. Not sure that the GPP's upside's there, but just consistently smashing out 30 points a game. And at 5,500, how do you go past that? Really love Gaz. He's at 59 on DraftKings, so it's a little bit less interesting, but 55 on FanDuel is brilliant. Farton Will Barton's at 5,900. Good game today, but a piss poor one the game before. Not interested in him at that price. At small forward, Chrissy Middleton's at 5,100. Well, he's going to come back and start. I think there's no doubt about that. He played 28 minutes in his last game, so the minutes should be okay. I like the 5,100 price tag here for Chris. He's at 55 on DraftKings. It is a little bit higher, but I still think that given his ability to produce and the lack of Beasley around, some extra shots to go around, I think it's not a bad spot to use Middleton here in cash and in GPP scenarios. Tone Snell, Wilson Chandler had a nice game today. He's at 6,600. Just feels a little bit too high though for Wilson. The matchup is super positive. There's no Ken Fareed, so I would be definitely fine with considering Wilson a GPP guy. I think that he's got a chance to get 35 or 36. I'm just not sure how high his upside actually is. As for the Rooster at 6,700, another decent performance, but just not producing in the other categories, which means that his DFS ceiling is somewhat limited. I reckon there are better ways for you to go than spending 6,700 on the Rooster. At power forward, Nikola Jokic at 9,800. He was back in business today. The Bucks, big men, it's all on. 9,800 for Jokic, let's go. He's at 88 on DraftKings. I know you're going to have Kylo Quinn as your center, but 8,800 for Jokic is a ridiculous price. That's so cheap, and you should definitely be considering that as an option. I said, O'Quinn's a little bit higher on DraftKings, so he's not quite as much of a lock as what he is on FanDuel, but man, you've got to have shares of Jokic as well. At that price, it's so low. Any other power forwards to talk about? No, there's not. At center there is, though. Greggy Munro at 6,400. Are we going to get 20-minute Greg Munro or 33-minute Greg Munro? Are we going to get an appearance from John Henson at all? They're the questions that plague me every night as I go to bed. What do we get with Greg? Now, if Greg plays 30 minutes, then in this matchup against Denver, it's going to be all over. He's going to put together 34, 35 points. But is Nikola Jokic going to just absolutely put him to the sword where Kid's going to get frustrated and put out a worse defender in John Henson, although he doesn't seem to think that's the case, but that's what he believes. So Greggy at 6,400, and especially Greggy at 5,800 on DraftKings, has great GPP upside. That's the other way to go. Just don't know what Kid's going to do. That's the problem. And it's a problem with Kid always. Thon Makur is probably going to start, but probably not going to play enough minutes. Let's move on to the next game now. Cleveland and Boston. We've got the Cavs favored by 1. The total is 222. We don't know if this will be Darren Williams' debut. The other news is Andrew Bogut has signed with Cleveland. He's expected to sign across the weekend, so we're not going to see Bogey here in this game. And Darren Williams could make his debut and play 20-ish minutes, I guess, is what we'd be expecting. So I don't think he's going to become a very good DFS option if he does happen to play. I would assume that he does. I think that he's ready to go, and that would be the way that I'm thinking at the moment. That's the way I'm going to approach you in talking about this game, assuming that Williams is in. At point guard, Isaiah Thomas is at 9,400. It's still a very, very big salary, and I would only consider it because he's playing against Kyrie, so it's a positive matchup. And he can go off. We know that. He can score 50. But it's only for GPPs. I have no trust on that in cash. Now, on DraftKings at 8,500, that feels a lot better for cash. Definitely feels a lot better. That's a great positive matchup for him against Kyrie. As for Kyrie, 9,100. Really good numbers recently. And the defense-wise, we talk about Isaiah having a good matchup. Well, Kyrie's got the worst defender in the entire NBA to match up against. Unless they put Avery Bradley on him, or unless they put Marcus Smart on him. And then it gets a little bit more prickly. So I don't think that we take Kyrie at 9,100. He's at 87 on DraftKings. I'm not totally feeling that either. At shooting guard, Marcus Smart's at 59 with Avery Bradley returning. Even in limited minutes, I'm not sure that 5,900 for Marcus Smart is the smartest idea. Kyle Korver, Iman Shumpert, Avery Bradley. Not going to use Bradley because he's at 5,900 and he's going to be limited to 15 minutes or so. So that's clearly not going to be an interesting situation. At small forward, Jay Crowder's at 58. Terrible in the last game. Now he gets to face off against LeBron, so I don't really think that's a great positive for him. 53 on DraftKings. I would look in a different direction. Jaylen Brown at 38. Brown did well against the Cavs earlier in the season. He's done well against the Cavs the couple of times they've played. He scored 25 in the last game. He's at 3,800. I don't hate using Jaylen Brown as a GPP guy here. At 4,000 on DraftKings, it takes away a fair degree of his appeal. But on FanDuel at 38, yeah, consider it. LeBronald is at 10,600. Big games from LeBron against Boston in the past. I think it's fine to spend that sort of cash on him. If you use it in cash, I don't think it's a bad move. He's at 10.9 on DraftKings. Yeah, it's pretty solid. You're going to get 40-ish, 50, like 48, 49, 51, that sort of zone, and that feels pretty good at that salary for LeBron. Channing Frye at 5,000. Well, will he move back into the starting lineup because he was benched in the last game for Richard Jefferson for matchup purposes? Does he come back and start? Because he only played 13 minutes in that last game. At $5,000. I'm not sure his upside is actually high enough for me to consider him a must-roster guy. I don't think it is. Amir Johnson, no thanks. Derek Williams, no. Jonas Jerebko, no. Also, at centre, Al Horford, 5,900. That salary is tumbling. For a good reason. He's been terrible. He's at 5,600 on DraftKings. The Cavs are a terrible matchup. But I sneakily like Horford here. I think that there's a chance for him to bounce back. He doesn't have a very high bar to cross, especially on 5,600 on DraftKings. But I would only do it in a GPP where his ownership should be really rock bottom. And if he has a big game, it can really turn things around. And even if he only has a mediocre game and maybe gets you 30 points, then that's still a win. I like Horford here, and not many people will. Tristan Thompson at 6,100. There's no way that I would spend 6,100 on Tristan Thompson in this matchup, even though Boston is a good source of stats for opposition big men. The next game, we've got the Paul George Bowl. Well, not the Paul George Bowl, the Kawhi Leonard Bowl. That's what I meant to say. The Pacers traveling to San Antonio to take on the Spurs. The Spurs are favoured by 10.5, and the total is 208.5. Al Jefferson is still questionable with dental pain, while Tone Parker is questionable with his quad. If Al Jeff is out, Raheem Christmas takes on that role. Well, if Tone Parker is out, we're going to see DeJounte Murray for 20 minutes or so, and high 20s in minutes for Pat Mills. And those two guys do open up value. You probably look to Mills more than Murray, but Murray has been able to produce value in DFS in this role as a starter when Parker's been out, so don't forget that. Let's talk about the point. Let's talk if Tone Parker plays at 4,500. A decent game in the last one, but his upside's not high enough for me to care too much here. Jeff Teague's the other one we want to look at.
My name is Jeff.
He is at 7,200. It's a terribly negative matchup. Jeff is coming off a 41-point game the last time that he was on the court. Am I fully invested in Jeff Teague? The answer to that's no, but I like him on DraftKings because he comes in at $6,600, and I think that there's some value there, but I would only look at him as really a GPP type of a player. As for Mills, yeah, if Parker's out, sure. Shooting guards, Dan Green's at 38, nope. Manu, nope. Monte Ellis is interesting, but he's at 4,800. They have bumped his salary, and I'm going to say no. And Rod Stuckey had a decent game in the last one. 31 points in that one for Rod. He's at 3,800. I have very little faith in Rod Stuckey putting up that sort of performance again, so I reckon you can pass. The small forwards is where the real interest is at 8,900 for Kawhi Leonard. I love that. Against Paul George, a $700 price. Now, Paul George is a good defender, yes, but Kawhi's had the best of him in pretty much all of their matchups. I think that you should be looking at easily 40 plus here for Leonard. On the flip side, Kawhi Leonard normally gets the best of Paul George. Now, he comes in at 7,700 on FanDuel George, and that's a strong fade for me. Same as on DraftKings, where they're at 8,600 and 7,400 respectively. Kawhi, yes. Paul George, no. CJ Miles, who's been starting, is not really doing anything of interest, though. Power forward, that's the word. LaMarcus Aldridge, $7,200. Just not quite at that level, so I think that's a fade, while Thaddeus Young is at 5,100 and has been nowhere near that, and this matchup becomes a shit one for him. So I'm pretty sure you can do better than using Miguel with a good comment that Al Jefferson's got the worst dentist in the world. That's pretty accurate. I don't know, how is he missing like a week with dental pain? Yeah, not really. I think he goes to that dentist on The Simpsons where that guy holds up the big book of British smiles. That's who I'm imagining is Al Jefferson's dentist. And now I've got dental plan Lisa needs braces in my head. Good one, Josh. All right, Pau Gasol. Are we up to him yet? Yeah, let's talk Pau Gasol. 6,300. Has been good, but not 6,300 good. I think we'll leave Pau Gasol alone. 5,600 on DraftKings for No, yeah, on DraftKings for power is interesting, but not enough. And 6,000 for Miles Turner, real negative matchup for Miles. I think it's a GPP situation for him, and I like it there. Same on FanDuel at 6,400, but I'm not really into him as a cash play here at all. All right, we've got 3 games to go, and this has been a marathon podcast once again. Sorry for waffling so long, guys. Minnesota at Utah. The Jazz are favored by 6.5, and the total is 201 points. Let's go. Point guards. Ravishing Rick Rubio. I haven't played that song for ages. So I just wanted to do that. Rick Rubio is at 6,900. Been putting up really, really good numbers, averaging 36 across the last 3. But this is Utah, man. This is where point guards go to die in general. So I'm going to say that's a no. No from me for Rick Rubio at 6,900. I think you can do better. Now, at 6,100 on DraftKings, now that gets me interested. I don't have full confidence just because it is Utah, and Ricky has struggled in the last couple against Utah, but I feel pretty good about it in GPPs, and I might even consider sneaking him into a cash lineup at that much reduced salary. For some reason, Rubio is averaging 40 points over the last 3, and DraftKings said, cool, we probably should drop him by $500. So that price, it definitely comes into play, and it definitely makes him interesting over there. Now, as for Tyus Jones, he's at 3,600. He's played 20-plus minutes for 3 consecutive games at the 2-guard spot and had a couple of decent outings. At 3,600, I'm not fully in on it, but at 3,000 on DraftKings, he's averaging 20 points over his last 3 games. At $3,000, 20 points, you can work out the math there. That's 7x, almost 7x, and that's useful. I don't know if they'll continue to do that, and the matchup's not a good one. But there's GPP upside there if you're sneaking in. If you're putting Davis in, if you're putting Yanni in, if you're putting Jokic in, maybe you need a $3,000 guy in one of your GPPs. Tyus Jones would be someone, if you're looking for minimum salary, there's not going to be many minimum salary guys who have a higher level of output potentially. Chris Dunn, no thanks. Georgie Hill. $6,000 for George. He's been putting up some solid numbers. I don't feel it here in this matchup. I don't think it's a good investment. At shooting guard, Rocket Rodney Hood is at 4,100. A nice performance from Rocket today. His 3rd game back. I'm still not fully invested, but GPPs like it a lot and think that he could really return some nice value there. Brandon Rush, no thank you. At small forward, Wigo. Wigo's putting up good numbers, but his salary is also big. It's 8,100 on FanDuel, and the matchup is not a good one. So I don't think that I would take Wigo there. Now, on DraftKings, they've docked him by $800 down to 7,400. He's averaging 46 points across the last 5. Yes, it's a negative matchup, but I think that Wigo at that salary on DraftKings absolutely has to be someone you use. Or, no, it has to be someone you consider in GPPs. I'm not really feeling it for cash though, but that's a really good price drop over there and something to take advantage of. Gordo Hayward's at 8,200. He's been putting up around 40 points a night, but I'm still not fully convinced. 7,600 for DraftKings is nice GPP, but not fully invested. Gorgie Jean, Derek Favors, way too risky at this point for me to look at them. The centers is where it's really at. Karl Anthony Towns is at 10,500. I like him. He's been crushing it, but now he gets Gobert, and that's a real issue. He's averaging 36 points the last 3 times he's taken on Rudy, and yes, he's at a much higher level than all those last 3 times. But I'm not fully thinking that he is going to be this absolute plug-and-play type of guy. As I said earlier, Cock's my cash center. Towns at that price, he can be used, and he could have a 55er. And the salary hasn't actually jumped up too high to make him terrible to use. He's at 10,000 on DraftKings. But the Gobert factor is something you have to factor in. Now, as for Rudy at 7,900, just feels maybe a little bit too expensive at that price. 72 on DraftKings, I can definitely consider Rudy Gobert an option over there. He can drop 40 on most nights, and Karl Anthony Towns' defense has not been good. So I think Rudy is definitely someone that's up for consideration at that sort of a price. All right, we move now on to the The Brooklyn Nets and the Sacramento Kings. The Kings are favored by 3 and the total is 215.5. Karis LeVert will return and he'll move straight back into the starting lineup. And the other one we need to pay attention to for Sacramento, is Aaron Aflalo, whether he is in or out. We also don't know what they're doing starting at shooting guard. Will it be Tyreek? Will it be Ben Macklin will be starting at the 3. Will it be Tyreek? Will it be Ty Lawson? Will it be Bud Hield? We don't know what Jaeger's going to do so far. He's flip-flopped between first game of Lawson, second game of Evans, third game of Lawson. So we don't know exactly what they're going to do. Now, point guard, Ty Lawson's at 4,200. He had 28 points in that start. At 4,200, I love that as a GPP. In a great matchup against Brooklyn, there's definitely GPP value in Ty. But until we know, if we hear that he's starting, then it even becomes a cash play. But until we know that he's starting, then it becomes tough to consider. As for Dazza Collison, he is at $6,000, not quite at that level. Not interested in him at $6,000. And the Brooklyn point guards, Jeremy Lin's minutes limit will be upped, but only to 20. So no. Isaiah Whitehead, Spencer Dinwiddie, really too untrustworthy. Although Dinwiddie's been playing fantastic, to be honest, averaging 31 over the last 3 in 26 minutes. At 4,300, if you've got balls, maybe you can consider Dinwiddie a GPP guy. I don't think that I would. I don't think my balls are as big as Markieff Morris's. At shooting guard, Tyreek is at 5,900. He's been putting up consistent, say, mid-20s in price, but 5,900 is not quite there. But he has torched the Nets in the past, and I like it as a GPP option, but that is it for Tyreek. As for Bud Hield, that's a no thanks. Karis LeVert, also a no thanks. And Benny McLemore's at 42. Really hard to feel any reliability there, but this is such a great matchup against the Nets that maybe you throw Bud into a GPP. Maybe you throw Ben. I feel pretty good about Benny getting his 30 minutes or 28 minutes and being able to do something in this really good matchup for him. Shawnee Kilpatrick is up and down, to say the least. He's at 3,800 and he's got 35-point upside, so that makes him a GPP player pool guy pretty much every night. But with LeVert back, I'm not feeling it. I'm not feeling LeVert either. At small forward, Rondé Hollis-Jefferson, 4,800, has been actually putting up some okay numbers. 31 points in the last game for Rondé. Not sure that 4,800 is the best price tag for him, and 5,000 on DraftKings is obviously a little bit higher. But I'm not really all that interested in using Rondé in this matchup. At power forward, Will Cauley-Steins at 5,400. I really like that. I think that's a solid option. A brilliant matchup for him. The minutes have been fine, a real stinker in the middle, but his 2 other games have been good. 29 points in the last game, 40 in the first game post DeMarcus Cousins. At 5,400, no issue considering using him. I really think that he's a good play here, as much as I don't really believe in him as being a great player. It's a good opportunity for him. At center, we've got Costa Koufos, who went big in the last game. He's at 4,200. You can look at that, especially on DraftKings, where he comes in at 39. You can look at that as a GPP option, but that's probably about where we stand with Costa. And Brook Lopez at 7,300. Some good numbers apart from the last game for Brook. I would probably just look at him as a GPP guy. I don't feel all that confident about using him in any cash game situations. All right, let's roll through this one now and get to the last game. It is Houston. It is the Clippers. This is the stackable game of the day. The Clippers are favored by 1.5, so a close spread. Check. We've got a massive total, 232.5. Check. We've got good players. Check. This is the GPP stack game that you're looking for. If you're looking to stack guys, Griffin, Jordan, Paul, Harden, Anderson, Williams, Capella, Crawford, and probably not, Redick maybe. There's lots of stackable options in this game. And this is going to be the one that, if you hit on the right ones, wins you the GPPs, I think, in a lot of cases. Let's start by talking about point guards. And we'll start with Patrick Beverley of the Houston Rockets. Bev is at 5,400, a little bit of a disappointing night in the last game, and now he takes on Chris Paul. So that's not a great idea to consider him a must-own guy, but as part of your stacks, sure. Now, as Chris Paul, now he gets a shit matchup too, because he takes on Pat Beverley. Now, in terms of his salary, they bumped it by $1,100 over on FanDuel, and that's a nightmare. Is at $9,700 now, but again, as part of your stacks, he has to be considered, but I wouldn't be looking at him as a cash game play just because that extra bump they put on the salary. Now, on DraftKings, he went to $8,900, so a little bit more impressive, and honestly, he's done pretty well against Beverley, averaging just 54 points over the last 3 games, so some nice numbers from Chris Paul there in that situation. Austin Rivers, I don't think so. At shooting guard, Reddick and Crawford, as I mentioned, you look at them as GPP guys, but mainly Reddick would be the guy to look at there. And Jim Harden's at 12,200. Not sure that he's quite the cash guy just at this point, but he is interesting in tournaments. But he's not a cash play, I don't think. Miguel throws in a fade the bid. Yeah, I think he's a cash fade. But as I said, if you're stacking GPPs, he's got to be part of it, because this game goes off. If it goes to OT, you want to have parts of Harden in that sort of a situation. As for Lou Williams at 6,400, that's too high. Yes, he's played well, but that's too high for me, 6,400. I put no faith in that, again, outside of the GPP stack situation that I touched on earlier. Eric Gordon, no interest in him at 5,100. For the small forwards, Trevor Ariza has been in a massive slump, but if he gets out of the slump, it works out, and that's a very cheap price for 5,100. So no cash, but GPPs for Trev there. And power forwards. Let's talk Ryan Anderson. Well, you know the drill with Ryan Anderson. Really struggling. 22-point average over the last 5, but he's down to 4,700, and he can go for 40. He can get hot. We know that. Great GPP option. Horrible cash game option. Blakey Griffin is the other one the other power forward here. $10,000. 66 points he had in the last game. I love this matchup for Blake. I think it's actually a cash game play as well as a tournament play, and at 9,100 on DraftKings, it's even better. Really do like Blake Griffin here. The centers, DeAndre Jordan's at 77 and Clint Capella's at 51. Both guys are useful. I do prefer Jordan if I'm looking in cash, but obviously you can use either one of those in a tournament. And again, I'd probably prefer Jordan in a tournament spot as well. You could also consider Nene over on DraftKings, where he comes in at 3,500 and he's averaging 23 points in the last 3. And you could see him getting 20 minutes in this game and being interesting in a really good matchup for him as well. So he's a guy to pay some attention to, I guess, is the best way of me phrasing that. All right, let's now go on to the picks of the day. Before we wrap this up, on FanDuel, we have got Ty Lawson at 4,900. We've got Malcolm Brogdon at 51 and Isaiah Thomas at 94. Rocket Rodney Hood's at 4,100. Kentavious Caldwell-Pope is at 5,400 and Yanni is at 11,100. Terrence Ross at 44. Chrissy Middleton 51 and Kawhi at 89. Richaun Holmes 45. Willie Cauley-Stein 54 and Nikola Jokic at 98. And at center, Kylo Quinn at 47. DeAndre Jordan 77. And Karl Anthony Towns, 10,700. On DraftKings, Ty Lawson, 42. Brogo comes in at 5,000. And Isaiah Thomas at 85. At shooting guard, Tyus Jones, 3,000. Chris Middleton, 55. And Jimmy Harden at 11,700. Dante Cunningham, 3,000. The Pencil at 6,000. And Yanni at 10,500. At power forward, Costa Koufos, 39. Paulie Millsap, 7,000. And Blakey Griffin at 9,100. And at center, Gorgie Jeng is a GPP flyer at 49. Kylo Quinn, 52, and Nikola Jokic at 8,900. On the Aussie sites, Moneyball, Corey Joseph, 38, Georgie Hill, 58, and Chrissy Paul, 88. Chrissy Middleton, 35, Tyreek's at 52, and DeRozan's at 9,000. At small forward, Terry Ross, 4,000, Paulie George, 71, and Kawhi at 91. The power forwards, Richaun Holmes, 39, Ibaka's at 62, and Blake Griffin's at 97. And at center, Kylo Quinn, 48, Nerlens Noel, 54, and Hassan at 8,200. On Draft Stars, Tyus Jones at 5,000, Brogo at 8,650, and Isaiah Thomas at 15,650. Ben McLemore, 55, Terry Ross, 8,850, and Kawhi at 14,150. At small forward, Torian Prince, 5,000, The Pencil at 11,200, and Yanni's at 20,000. At power forward, Cock is at 7,950, Greg Monroe 95, and Nikola Jokic 14,200. And at center, Costa Koufos 7,550, Willie Cauley-Stein 9,250, and Karl Anthony Towns 17,850. We are done here, guys. Subscribe to this podcast and leave a review if you like it. It's a great way of helping me bring on more sponsors and helping keep the podcast improving and growing. So go ahead and do that. It would be much appreciated. And tell your friends. Share it on social media. Whisper it in their ear at nighttime when you're at a bar. Locked On Fantasy Basketball. Do whatever you can to help out the show. It's always much appreciated. Follow me on Twitter at redrock_bball. We are done here, guys. Thank you so much for listening, everyone. See ya. Markieff Morris.